A deadly shootout claims 2 lives and threatens countless innocent bystanders.
It was a birthday party. It was going to be a great night.
I'm on the floor, bleeding like crazy.
With a trio of witnesses hanging on for dear life, Lieutenant Joe Kenda must determine if this is a case of cold-blooded revenge.
It's not the only time in history that some witness has been eliminated.
Or a deadly rivalry that dates back decades.
Outlaw biker groups were trying to expand their territory.
As the mystery deepens, it's up to Kenda to stop the shooter before it's too late.
Being on a bulletproof vest, full of ammo.
He has an arsenal fit for a warlord. Gang mentality has been with us for thousands of years, and it makes it incredibly dangerous because it dehumanizes the victim. It speaks to the worst side of human nature, the violent side.
Saturdays are normally busy for the Colorado Springs PD, but tonight is one for the record books.
Dispatch to car 31.
31, go ahead.
There's been a shooting at Gemini's bar.
10-4 en route.
Be advised, it's a possible shootout with an outlaw motorcycle club.
10-4. It's the shooting in progress.
We've got 3 other cars en route. Good luck and stay safe.
Gemini's bar is very popular with bikers and biker gangs.
Stopping a gun battle with a biker gang could very well cost the responding officers their lives.
When an officer is responding to an in-progress shooting, there's a lot that goes through the officer's mind. He's worried about his safety along with the safety of innocent people. He wants to get the gunfire stopped as soon as possible.
Everybody, drop your weapons, please! Bro, watch your back! I see him!
With this person not responding to the commands being given, he's deemed to be an aggressor.
Let the gun down! Let me see your hand!
Suddenly, they hear a faint but terrifying sound.
He's reloading! Stop it now! Now! Now!
And police are trained to make quick assessments.
That he is in danger, and the only way to stop that is by the use of deadly physical force.
5 miles south, Lieutenant Joe Kenda is spending Saturday night catching up on paperwork.
This Kenda.
McComm Center, it says there is a major gun battle underway at Gemini's bar.
Okay.
I immediately became alarmed because Gemini's caters to outlaw bikers. It must be some kind of biker group warfare.
All right, I'll be right there. Bye.
The average person says, well, they're just a bunch of criminals. Well, not really. The majority of people who are motorcycle enthusiasts are professionals and working people who happen to love motorcycles.
To lump anybody on a motorcycle into a stereotype of a group is it's just ignorant. What I love most about riding my own bike is the independence of it and just being out in the open air.
1% of those enthusiasts are criminals who engage in illegal behavior. The Sons of Silence, one of these groups, is headquartered in Colorado Springs, and Gemini's is a bar that they frequent. The FBI identifies them as one of the top 10 most violent biker gangs in the U.S. There's been all kinds of bad blood between the PD and the Sons.
Gentlemen, so what's the damage?
Well, we've got 1 deceased. We've got 6 more that have been taken to the hospital, including one that Officer Rao had to take down.
Jesus. Any of our guys get hit?
Oh, thankfully, no.
So what have we got so far?
The shooting begins inside the bar. Then it moves outside, and then it moves to a restaurant parking lot immediately north of that building, where the shooting continues until the police arrive and stop it.
Walking across the parking lot, Kenda observes a crime scene that looks more like a war zone.
I see an enormous number of rifle casings, and I recognize them immediately as 7.62 by 39 millimeter. This is fired out of a Kalashnikov, more commonly known as an AK-47.
We've at least got one of the AKs.
Now let's go look at the body.
Just around the corner from the Gemini's front door lies 33-year-old Stephen Fairfax.
Was he a member of the Sons of Silence?
The guy that ID'd him said that he wanted to be.
You don't automatically just become a member of the Sons of Silence. Somebody has to vouch for you.
They take a vote that they will accept you as a spec, a prospective member. He's a spec for the SOS.
Kenda starts by examining Stephen's injuries.
He's been shot 3 times, once in the neck, once in the arm, and once in the torso. Looking at the neck, I would say his spinal cord is severed, and he's dead before he hits the ground. Instantaneous.
Kenda turns his attention to the evidence surrounding the body.
380.
My first thought is the expanded casings are probably from the 9mm handgun laying in the parking lot some distance away, but then we can look at these casings and they're 380s. They come out of a 380 handgun, not a 9mm.
To Kenda, the 9mm casing suggests Stephen Fairfax fired a weapon multiple times during the shootout. But they also beg another question.
Now, where's the gun?
Kenda moves inside, where the shootout seemingly began.
It's an older bar. There's signs that there was live music being played at the time, microphone, drum set, things like that.
There are streamers around indicating it's a birthday party.
There was a lot of damage in there. Chairs knocked over, stools knocked over, bullet holes, people, blood.
It's clear that somebody had actually just fired a weapon multiple times into the ceiling.
Now, are they doing that to get everybody's attention? That would certainly do it.
Have you guys been collecting up all the casings here? What's the caliber?
A lot of 7.62 by 39 and a few 9mm.
So with the 380 rounds that we have outside, and now we have 9mm and AK-47 rounds inside, we know that there are at least 3 weapons involved in this incident.
Who did what to whom, and who started this, and who tried to finish it?
Kenda heads out to the Gemini's patio, where patrons who didn't flee when police arrived are now gathered.
So what do you have for witnesses?
Not a lot to choose from. Everyone's claiming they were here just having a good time.
And all of a sudden it goes from party to gunfire, with no clear explanation of how it did that.
So you're the bartender?
Yeah, Susie Stoudemire.
I'm Lieutenant Kenda. Could you tell me what you saw tonight?
She begins her statement by saying that there was a birthday party that was underway for a very popular biker named Jerry Cooper. They just had a jukebox playing, but the live band hadn't gotten underway yet. Everybody's in a good mood. She is pouring everybody drinks. All of a sudden, she sees one individual with an AK-47.
Terrified, Susie ducks behind the bar and stayed put until the shooting stopped.
And then what'd you see?
There was blood everywhere. So many people were shot. It looked like something out of a horror movie or something. And then I saw my friend PK lying on the ground. And my heart just... Oh my God! It's gonna be okay.
okay, PK?
Everybody knew Paul Klein as PK. That was his nickname. He was a member of the Sons of Silence. He also was in the bar that night because he was the bar manager.
It's gonna be okay, PK.
He was described as the guy that loved his friends and took care of people. And he was the person that people could trust.
He was very protective of Jim and I in the bar.
Knowing PK is a full-fledged member of the Sons of Silence, and that Stephen Fairfax is a spec, Kenda wonders if the gang itself had been targeted.
Once a year, these outlaw biker gangs gather in the area of Aspen, Colorado, for a supposed friendly rally. They have a tendency to hate each other, and they gather for a council every year to air out their differences, kind of like biker court. And despite their promise of no trouble, there always is trouble.
This year's Aspen rally had occurred just a few weeks before tonight's bloodbath.
It really piques our interest is whether or not this is related to something that possibly happened up at Aspen.
Are we going to be up to our waist in dead bikers? We need to find out if this is the opening salvo of a biker war. We're investigating a mass shooting at Gemini's bar. And given the fact that the Sons of Silence are frequent customers of this establishment, is this a biker war? What is going on here?
Aware that there was a gathering of outlaw biker gangs in nearby Aspen prior to the shooting, Kenda reaches out to the Narcotics Division to see if they have any additional intel.
Hey, Scott.
Lieutenant.
How you doing?
Good.
So what do you think? It sound like fallout from the bike rally a few weeks ago?
Certainly could be. Sons have been getting a lot of flack, mostly from Hell's Angels.
They tell us the Hells Angels have been moving into Colorado and encroaching on their turf. The Angels consider themselves to be the first and the best of the outlaw gang.
The Hells Angels have a history going back to the 1940s.
They came from World War II, returning veterans, Bakersfield, California, who missed the action, the brotherhood, loyalty. They started riding motorcycles, which nobody did then, and formed in groups. They were fiercely patriotic. They only rode American motorcycles.
But over time, some branches of the Hells Angels turned outlaw, seduced by the easy money of the drug trade.
And just like any enterprise, they're trying to expand their territory for their own personal gain.
So the Angels got their eye on Colorado now.
Looks like it. More territory, more drugs.
I can imagine the Sons aren't too happy about that.
The Sons are one of the smaller biker gangs, but it is widely known that they control Colorado. How dare the Hells Angels think otherwise?
Do you think it's going to be an all-out war?
I sure hope not.
Fortunately for Kenda, there's a simple way to find out.
The local chapter of the Angels is not in the Springs, it's in Denver. So we drive to Denver. We walk in the door, and all of a sudden you hear crickets.
Can we help you?
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. There was some trouble at a bar in the Springs last night. A place where the Sons of Silence hang out sometimes. You guys know anything about that?
We heard about it. We didn't have anything to do with that. Can't say I'm sad it happened, though.
I think maybe they're telling the truth. They tend to be kind of proud of what they do. If they were the people, they would tell you without telling you.
Well, if it wasn't you, do you know who we should talk to?
Yeah, I can't help you.
Well, if you hear anything, make sure you give us a call.
This shooting doesn't appear to be related to turf wars going on.
it's the usual, back to the beginning. Let's start again. Who got shot? Could it be somebody with a motive against Mr. Fairfax only, and not against the Sons of Silence?
So we have to start doing a background check on him. We were able to identify Stephen's stepmom, Loretta Collins.
Yes?
Ma'am, I'm Lieutenant Kenda. Can I ask you a few questions?
You here to talk about Stephen?
Loretta tells us that when he graduated high school, he went to the University of North Colorado for a short period of time, and he returned to Colorado Springs, where he started to pursue more his interest into being a member of the motorcycle organization.
He always had a wild streak in him. He was having difficulty holding his life together, but the one thing he absolutely loved was his motorcycle.
Can you think of anyone that want to harm him?
You know, we hung around with a rough crowd, but he was a good person.
Well, thank you for your help.
Still unable to catch a solid lead, Kenda turns to the database for information on Mr. Fairfax.
Hey, Joe, you're not going to believe this.
What's up?
We learned that he had an interaction with the Sheriff's Department in Boulder County 6 days before his death. That is something that really piques our interest.
That was a homicide, and our only eyewitness, Stephen Fairfax.
Marquette Spencer had been arrested for killing her estranged husband.
Just because she's in custody doesn't rule her out for being responsible.
No, it does not.
Did Marquette Spencer order a hit on Stephen Fairfax from the cozy confines of Boulder County Jail? And had the attack on Fairfax triggered the massive shootout at the Gemini Bar?
Fairfax is a witness in a homicide, and now he is dead from multiple gunshot wounds. That seems rather convenient. We have 6 people in a hospital undergoing emergency surgery, and now we're in possession of information that says Mr. Fairfax, the deceased, is an eyewitness in a recent homicide in Boulder County.
The woman charged with the Boulder County homicide is one Marquette Spencer. Kenda wonders if Marquette had Stephen Fairfax killed in order to silence him.
We don't know how critical his testimony will be to that prosecution, but we know that it's not the only time in history that some witness has been eliminated.
Boulder Sheriff's Office, this is Janice.
Hi, this is Joe Kenda in Colorado Springs.
Hey, Joe. How's it going down the Springs? You need some help from Boulder?
Yeah, I do, actually. I have some questions about a homicide involving a Marquette Spencer. Can you tell me what went down?
They report that Fairfax is hanging out with Marquette when her ex-husband stops by and a bickering match ensues.
Go ahead.
All right.
How's your free
Excuse me?
I'm sick of giving you this
Giving me this?
Yeah, you ain't selling nothing.
Look, you can get out now.
You gonna kick me out of my own house?
It's not your house anymore.
Wait, whoa, man, go the on. Come on. Go on.
You're crazy.
Mr. Fairfax ran into another room to call 911.
Hey, I need help at 16 Kane Avenue. Oh my God.
He heard gunshots. He came back outside to notice that Margaret Spencer is holding the gun and Andrew White is on the ground dying.
We've got her charged with second-degree murder. Her trial is in just a few months.
Interesting timing.
Kenda dispatches one of his detectives to the Boulder County Jail to determine if Marquette Spencer is the mastermind of the attack on Stephen Fairfax.
My name's Detective Kingsbury. I need to ask you a few questions.
Okay. I mean, I told him everything I know.
I'm sorry to inform you, ma'am, that Mr. Fairfax is dead.
Stephen's dead? What happened?
She is shocked to learn that Stephen Fairfax, her friend, is dead. She's even more shocked to learn that we would think she would somehow do something to harm him.
You think I had something to do with it?
Well, I wouldn't be here if we didn't.
Look, what I did was terrible, but it was an accident. I mean, I was out of my mind, I was high, my ex came over, and things got out of control.
So you're not denying killing Andrew White?
No.
Now, this is not the personality who wants to eliminate a witness. She's willing to tell a detective from another jurisdiction she's responsible for this crime.
Okay, I appreciate your time and help.
Hoping to learn more about what happened at the Gemini, Kenda decides to question the survivors of the shootout.
So we walk into this hospital to check on conditions on everyone that's been shot.
Excuse me.
Yes, how can I help you?
How you doing? I'm Lieutenant Kenda. I want to check on the people involved in the shooting last night.
I'm so sorry, Lieutenant, but Paul Klein has passed away from his injuries.
40-year-old Paul Klein, known to his fellow Sons of Silence gang members as PK, had been friends with the owners of the Gemini for years and even worked there as a manager.
He was entrusted to make decisions on our behalf when we weren't there.
He was a good dude, man. There was no two ways about it. He was friendly with everybody.
He was also a very educated man. Everything that he meant to say, he said it very eloquently.
What are the odds that the others will pull through?
We have two individuals that have some very serious injuries, Eugene Bayless and Alan Daniels. There's also 3 others who have less serious injuries. Our desire is really to interview all victims in this case.
Until Kenda can question the survivors, he remains in the dark about what or who instigated the shooting.
Could they be suspects? Could they be victims? Could they be both?
Sorry, Lieutenant, but the patients are still heavily sedated from the surgery. Doctors think it's not a good idea today.
Okay, I'll try back later. Thanks for your help.
While he waits on the survivors to be cleared for questioning, Kenda asks detectives to dig into their backgrounds, starting with the man Officer Rao shot, 42-year-old Eugene Bayless.
He didn't put down the gun, which led to him being shot. So why did he not comply with the officer's orders?
Kenda assumes Eugene is also a member of the Sons of Silence.
Come in.
But a background check makes Kenda think twice.
And there's nothing, not even a parking ticket.
What?
Apparently, he's their choir boy.
It would be very unusual for one of the members not to have some kind of criminal record.
He's nobody. So why in God's name is he in this establishment with all this ammunition and an AK-47? Who is Eugene?
At least we got an address here. Let's head over there.
Kenda and his men head out to the address on file for Eugene Bayless.
It's his parents' home. They live in a rural part of the city, just east of the city limits, on a very small ranch, a few acres of ground.
Can I help you?
Mrs. Bayless?
Yes.
I'm sorry to have to tell you, but your son was involved in a shooting downtown.
Oh my God.
I said, well, Eugene is injured. He's going to survive. Don't be alarmed.
But then we have to advise her that he was actually one of the shooters.
Well, Eugene's a good son. He's a Vietnam vet. But I know things have been harder these past few years. His wife divorced him and took the kids.
Do you know if your son owns any weapons?
Well, yeah, he does. He's got quite a collection in his room.
Would you mind if we took a look in his room?
He lives in the root cellar.
Excuse me?
It's around back. He actually likes to call it a bomb shelter.
Please.
Eugene lives in a bunker, which is 9 by 12 feet.
Excuse me.
This is where Eugene resides. No running water, no bathroom facility. Eugene, as you might say, is a little odd.
There was a lot of tubs that had guns and ammunition, a large quantity of ammunition, more than what an enthusiast might keep.
Get a load of this.
He has grenades? The Marine Corps has grenades, but they're supposed to have them. They're illegal to possess. Why do you need hand grenades, Eugene? It's apparent that this is not a gun enthusiast. This is somebody that's dangerous.
Yes?
We're looking at the background of Eugene Bayless, one of the active participants in this event, and everything about him is disturbing. We discover him to be living in a root cellar in his mother's property with an arsenal fit for a warlord.
How the hell did he get all this stuff?
Not only is Eugene's cache of weapons disturbing, so are some of the illegal modifications he's made to them.
He buys a semi-automatic submachine gun legally on the marketplace. He then disassembles that weapon and converts it into full automatic.
Staring at Eugene's arsenal, Kenda sees the massacre at the Gemini bar in a whole new light.
I now believe that all my biker revenge scenarios are useless. We're dealing with a lone wolf gunman. Who knows what his motive is? Maybe he doesn't know either, but we are certainly going to find out.
Eugene, I'm Lieutenant Kenda. This is Detective Kingsbury. We need to read your rights. You have the right to remain silent.
He has an unusual look on his face. His eyes are wide open. He's going back and forth between myself and another detective. We advise him of his rights.
Do you understand these rights as I've spoken them to you?
Yes, sir.
And you're still willing to talk to us?
Absolutely. That biker caused me to do it.
Excuse me?
I just couldn't take it anymore. He pissed me off, and I wanted to confront him. So I went and grabbed my AK, and I went looking for him at that biker bar, because that's where they all hang out.
Eugene claims he went to the Gemini only to scare the man, and insists he never meant to shoot anyone.
What happened when you got to the bar?
Do anything special or anything? Nah.
When I got inside the bar, the Sons of Silence guys, they jumped me. And we fought over my gun, and then the rifle went off. But honestly, I don't know if it hit anybody.
Eugene says he was so taken aback by the incident that he immediately left the bar, but the Sons of Silence followed him out into the parking lot.
From there, it was just like everybody was yelling and shooting at me. The bikers, they wanted me dead, and the police did too. But honestly, I've never hurt a cop.
When officers get on scene, he can't put the gun down. He can't tell the officers anything. He just couldn't speak. That's why he didn't respond prior to getting shot by the police officers. Bayless's statement is very self-serving. He's placing the blame on other individuals for him walking into the bar with a weapon. What he's saying doesn't add up.
But Eugene, even if everything you're saying is true, what I don't understand is why you even went there in the first place.
I told you, it all started earlier that day, that dirtbag biker.
What's up, man? What are you looking at? What the f are you looking at? Got a problem?
But I'll be honest, I was shocked. I thought I was gonna die.
Wow, Eugene. So you were shot in the face twice in the same day. What are the odds?
While the injuries on Eugene's face are consistent with a gunshot wound, Kenda believes the damage was solely inflicted during the shootout with Officer Rao.
You were in the military, weren't you, Eugene?
Yes, sir. I served in Nam.
So you understand face wounds and how much they bleed? So if we were to search your vehicle right now, we'd find blood all over the place, right?
Well, not really. I think he used a BB gun.
So you didn't know this guy, just a random biker?
Like I said, I went up to Gemini's because that's where they all hang out.
This isn't a statement, so we decided to end it.
All right, thanks for your time. We'll be in touch.
Sure, okay.
By the time Kenda and his men wrap up with Eugene Bayless, doctors have given him the green light to interview the crime's other survivors.
Mr. Daniels? I'm Lieutenant Kenda. Hello.
Alan Daniels says he's a mechanic, he's a motorcycle enthusiast, he's not a member of the Sons. He considers it to be a normal Saturday night at Gemini's.
and we're having fun. There was nothing out of the ordinary that was happening.
Having a birthday party for a friend of ours.
Yeah. Have fun. Oh, yeah. And what I get married for, man? Thanks, yeah. Thank you,
The only son member that was in there that night was Paul Klein, or PK, and he was there because he works there.
While Kenda speaks with Alan Daniels, one of his men is talking to another survivor in the adjoining room.
Hello, Mr. Klein, how are you?
I've been better, but I'm happy to be alive.
This individual's name is Andrew Kiernan. He was sitting right outside the front door with his girlfriend, and they see a man approach with an AK-47.
Get the hell out of here.
Mr. Eugene, he's not trying to scare people. He's going to start shooting people as soon as he gets in that door. We've spoken to other witnesses, including people that were shot. We're able to piece together what transpired inside this bar on the night of this shooting.
It was filling up quickly. My brother Ron was on the door because BK was behind the bar that night. The guy came kind of barging in, put on a bulletproof vest full of ammo. Had an AK-47.
I've never seen the man before until that night. All I remember is Paul going toward him, me going toward him.
They are incredibly alarmed. They immediately seize this man. The weapon is still pointed skyward. When the trigger is pulled, and a burst of automatic weapons fire goes into the ceiling.
And he came down and he just started firing.
The automatic weapon sprayed the bar area, hitting bass player Kenneth Inman in the hand and bar regular Alan Daniels in the jaw.
Next thing I know, I'm on the floor, bleeding, trying to figure out what happened.
The next to get hit is birthday boy Jerry Cooper.
In the struggle, Klein is able to gain control of the AK-47 from Eugene.
But according to several survivors, that's when Eugene drew a second weapon.
Gene, he's armed with his 9mm and handgun. That's when PK is shot 3 times.
The witnesses tell Kenda that after shooting Paul Klein, Eugene Bayless retrieved his AK-47, exited the building, and continued shooting, making one final, truly bizarre statement on his way out the door.
Wow, that was an adventure.
It was just so fast, and I was like, how could this be happening? It was surreal. It wasn't real. This isn't happening. Is this a joke for Jerry's birthday? Is this not a really bad joke?
The shooting continues. Bikers are running out of this place, trying to get behind parked cars in 2 parking lots, and Eugene comes out with this AK, trying to hit these people that are hiding. Kiernan says he's shot in the parking lot by Eugene as he continues to blast away.
According to the survivors' statements, it's then that Stephen Fairfax pulls into the parking lot of the Gemini.
Steve Fairfax arrives on his motorcycle. He's kind of wondering what's going on because there's obvious signs of confusion going everywhere.
What the hell's going on?
Some guy over there with a machine gun shooting.
A machine gun?
Let's see what I can do. Are you crazy?
Yeah. He runs back there to try to talk some sense into the shooter.
Hey, man. You all right?
And he takes 3 gunshot wounds and falls dead in the parking lot.
With the casualties rising and no end in sight, another bystander takes matters into his own hands.
You have a man named Jeff Martin. Says he has a gun, he runs out to his van, he gets it. It's a .380 automatic. Comes back to the scene and tries to engage Mr. Bayless with that weapon.
Mr. Martin fires 5 shots from his .380 pistol at Eugene Bayless, but misses him with every shot. This finally explains where those .380 casings came from, because they fell next to Mr. Fairfax's body. Mr. Fairfax didn't have a gun. He was already dead. So no gun had been stolen. Jeff Martin had it.
Moments later, police arrive and put an end to Eugene's rampage.
Police! Everybody drop your weapons!
Our initial reaction to PK, knowing him as we do, member of the Sons, Steve Fairfax, a spec for the Sons, we make the leap that they're involved in this shooting, they're participants in this shooting, and the reality is that they're innocent people who are actually trying to save lives and pay for it with their own life.
But the investigation is far from over.
Jeff Martin had fired the .380, but we don't have Jeff Martin. He fled the scene prior to officers arrived, so we need to talk with him. It's very important to tie up this investigation to account for all the rounds that were fired and fired by who.
But Kenda is battling against the odds.
There are several Sons now wearing colors gathered at the hospital to support their friends.
You guys want justice for PK and Stephen Fairfax? You'll help us find Jeff Martin.
They make no response. They stare at us.
All right. You know where to find me.
We decided it's a long shot, but we had to ask.
Without a statement from Jeff Martin, the case against Eugene Bayless is less than airtight. But just 9 days later, an unexpected visitor shows up in Kenda's office.
Right. All right, let me know what you find out. Bye.
Is that what you're looking for?
The president of the chapter of the Sons of Silence in Colorado Springs came into my office with Jeff Martin.
Thanks, Lieutenant, for watching out for our club. It's not lost on us.
You're welcome.
PK was a hero. If he wouldn't have stepped in when he did, there'd be more people dead. We're all not bad guys.
I appreciate you guys coming in. Thank you.
With Jeff Martin's .380 revolver in hand, there's only one question left for Kenda to answer.
We have a good understanding of what happened in this bar. We don't have a clear understanding as to why.
In furthering our investigation on Eugene Bayless, we talked to his ex-wife who lives out of state.
They've been divorced for over a year.
Did you know of any conflicts Eugene had with the Sons of Silence biker gang?
No, not that I know of. I've never even heard him mention him.
Do you have any idea why you would open fire on him then?
Well, he's been an angry, vengeful person for as long as I've known him.
She went on to report that he told her many times he felt trapped in his life, that he was married with children. He sees himself as a biker, sees himself as a nomad. He could have lived a life of adventure instead of a life of drudgery.
Well, I appreciate the information.
No problem.
Thank you. Bye.
He's in a downward emotional spiral. He's lost his wife, he's lost his job, he's living in a concrete bunker in his parents' backyard. He's stockpiling weapons. Why is he doing that? In this cloud of depression and paranoia? The human mind is a complicated piece of machinery. As for the guy on the motorcycle who supposedly shot him in the face, I doubt that even happened. Eugene was a wannabe biker. He wanted to have an adventure, and when he wasn't accepted by them, he took his revenge on the bikers.
Eugene Bayless is formally charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and 16 counts of attempted murder. At trial, Bayless maintains he was acting in self-defense.
The jury acquits him of all murder charges.
It was frustrating for the fact that, we had a good case. I don't know if it's based on the fact that our victims were bikers and they were viewed negatively. We feel that he's guilty, but the courts have spoken, and that's what we'll live with.
However, Eugene is convicted of possession of an illegal firearm and is sentenced to 3 years in prison.
I'll never forget his face, I know that. I will never forgive or forget what he did. I do not want to ever go through that again. That man put me through hell.
No, justice was not served in this case. PK was a good man in the end, and thanks for saving my life.
You have 2 people who died and no one was found guilty of it. You have people who loved those people, who miss those people even today. And there's no true resolution of that.
Paul PK Klein. When you hear his name, some envision a warrior. After Saturday night, most will remember him as a hero.
This thing that happened over in Gemini's, it was an unselfish act that he did. He saved the lives of a lot of people.
Bikers are human beings. Even outlaw bikers are human beings. They're capable of moments of great courage. Stephen Fairfax, at the end of the day, was heroic in his efforts to save innocent lives. Irrespective of his history, irrespective of his involvement with the Sons of Silence, ultimately sacrifices his own life in defense of others. That is a remarkable thing.
The night was unusually quiet in the sleepy town of Clearwater, Florida, the kind of silence that presses against your chest and makes every distant sound feel like a threat. Streetlights flickered over cracked asphalt, shadows stretching long and twisted across empty sidewalks, mocking the few late-night wanderers who dared to leave their homes. On June 14, 1992, a scream pierced this suffocating calm, slicing through the humid summer air, but it was gone as quickly as it came. No one saw the face of the girl they would later call the victim. No one knew the sequence of events that led her there, and yet the aftermath would haunt this town for decades. Her name was Jennifer Collins, 17, a student with dreams bigger than the small houses she passed on her way home. Her friends described her as bright, cautious, the kind of girl whose laughter could fill a room and whose absence left an echo that never truly faded. That night, she had left her job at the corner diner just past midnight, a stack of napkins still in her apron pocket, the neon sign flickering behind her as she walked toward the bus stop. Someone somewhere was watching, moving silently, waiting. The bus never came, and neither did Jennifer. When the discovery was finally made, a few hours later, it was in a desolate stretch of mangrove swamp, the kind of place that seemed alive with whispers and movement. Her body lay partially concealed by tangled roots and muck, the evidence of violence evident, though the perpetrator had been meticulous. Police found signs of struggle, flattened reeds, broken branches, footprints leading in multiple directions, yet none that could be conclusively traced. The forensic technology of the early 90s was primitive compared to what would come, and the detectives, experienced but human, were left with fragments of a puzzle they could not complete. The community reacted with horror, fear spiraling into paranoia. Parents clutched their children tighter, friends whispered warnings about strangers, rumors of who could have done this circulated in hushed tones at school hallways and grocery store aisles. Yet the case became one of those things everyone talked about but no one could solve. It became a cold case, frozen in time, like the last frame of a movie that would never have an ending. Detective Mark Redding had been on the force for 15 years, the type who had seen the worst human nature could offer. He remembered the night vividly, the smell of wet earth and gasoline, the distant wail of a police siren threading through the darkness. He had walked that mangrove swamp countless times since, eyes scanning for overlooked details, hands flipping through worn case files, reviewing witness statements that led nowhere. Some witnesses claimed they saw a suspicious van near the diner. Others swore a man had been lurking at the bus stop, yet every lead fizzled into dead ends. The inconsistencies gnawed at him, like termites eating away at the integrity of a wooden beam. There was a note of desperation in his voice when he spoke to the press, carefully measured, hiding the rage and helplessness that simmered beneath. "We are pursuing every lead," he said, but inside, he feared this case might remain unresolved forever. Evidence was collected meticulously, stored in boxes lined with paper, fingerprints dusted and filed, photographs catalogued with obsessive precision. Yet no match came forward, no confession, no clue that could definitively point to Jennifer's killer. The initial investigation relied heavily on eyewitness testimony and circumstantial evidence, the kind that could bend and break under scrutiny. Neighbors recalled strange sounds, a dog barking into the night, lights in windows that shouldn't have been on, yet none of these observations led to an arrest. Months turned into years, years into decades, and the files grew thicker, yellowed with age, a testament to the time that had passed without resolution. Each anniversary of Jennifer's disappearance brought renewed media attention, but the headlines were repetitive, mournful. Teen vanishes in Clearwater, cold case baffles detectives, family seeks closure. The story became part of the town's identity, a shadow stretching over everyday life, a reminder that danger could strike when least expected. By the mid-2000s, technology had advanced, but so had the frustration of those working on the case. DNA evidence was collected, carefully preserved, frozen in the hope that someday science could speak louder than fear and speculation. Tiny traces on her clothing, minute samples from the crime scene, everything catalogued and preserved as if anticipating a future that might bring the truth. Officers revisited the case files, comparing notes with modern techniques, scanning databases that once didn't exist. The tip lines rang occasionally, calls from strangers claiming knowledge, some credible, others clearly attempts at mischief. Each lead was followed meticulously, the patience of decades tested repeatedly. Detective Redding had retired by then, but a few of the younger detectives carried the weight of his vigilance, continuing the search as a tribute to the fallen teenager whose voice had been silenced too soon. The town itself remained a character in the narrative, streets and buildings holding memories like ghosts. The diner where Jennifer worked had long closed, replaced by a generic chain restaurant, but old-timers still remembered the night she disappeared, the sight of officers and flashing lights, the whispered speculation. Mangrove swamps still lined the outskirts, seemingly untouched, yet forever associated with fear and tragedy. Locals avoided certain routes at night, parents warning their children to stay close, to watch for strangers. Fear and grief had interwoven into the daily fabric of Clearwater life, subtle yet persistent, a community holding its breath decades after the event. And then, in 2017, a breakthrough. A technician in a cold, sterile lab in Tampa noticed something peculiar while reviewing old DNA samples. The technology had changed, tools far more precise, able to detect genetic markers that were previously invisible. A comparison to national databases produced a hit, a match that sent a shockwave through law enforcement. A suspect, previously never considered, emerged from obscurity, someone whose name had never surfaced in initial investigations, whose presence in the town had been unremarkable at the time. It was the type of revelation that defied expectation, shaking the foundation of years of assumed impossibilities. Detectives were stunned, the air thick with disbelief, and yet the evidence was undeniable, the science irrefutable. Arrests were made, though quietly at first, in the dead of night, to prevent panic. The suspect's history was unremarkable in the public eye. A neighbor, a coworker, someone who had blended seamlessly into the background. Interviews were conducted, statements cross-checked, and a pattern of behavior began to emerge, sinister yet hidden beneath layers of normalcy. The realization that a community could harbor such a secret unknowingly was a chilling moment, a reflection of the fragility of assumed safety. The police carefully prepared for a public announcement, Understanding the impact this revelation would have on a town that had carried decades of fear, grief, and unanswered questions. Media outlets prepared headlines, photographers snapped images outside courthouses, and journalists scrambled for quotes from family members, neighbors, and law enforcement. The story was everywhere, dominating screens and front pages. A 25-year-old mystery finally solved, the sense of closure tempered by the horror of the truth. Community members reacted with a mixture of relief and disbelief, some weeping quietly, others struggling to comprehend the normal life they had taken for granted. The combination of justice served and decades-long suffering created a complex emotional tapestry, one that was difficult to untangle. Even as the case reached its climax, lingering questions remained. How had this person evaded suspicion for so long? What tiny detail had allowed decades to pass unnoticed? Investigators reflected on the missteps and limitations of early 90s policing, the challenges of evidence preservation, and the advances of modern forensic science that finally illuminated the darkness. Families of victims in similar unsolved cases followed closely, hopeful that breakthroughs like this could one day resolve their own lingering uncertainties. The town of Clearwater was forever changed, the memory of Jennifer Collins indelibly imprinted on every street and sidewalk, a reminder that evil can hide in plain sight and that sometimes justice takes decades to find its voice. And so, while the case had been closed, the echoes persisted. Conversations in local coffee shops revisited the night she vanished, teenagers listening to tales of the past with a mixture of curiosity and dread. Parents double-checked locks, neighbors cast wary glances at unfamiliar faces, and law enforcement quietly filed away the lessons learned. The town had survived, yet it had been altered, scarred by events that time could never fully erase. Every anniversary brought a quiet moment of reflection, a nod to the persistence of memory, the resilience of justice, and the enduring impact of one tragic night that would never be forgotten. The morning after the announcement, Clearwater felt different, though nothing had changed. The streets were the same cracked asphalt, the mangrove swamps still whispered in the wind, and the sun rose as lazily as ever, casting shadows across neighborhoods that had been haunted for 25 years. Yet the town's heartbeat had shifted. Conversations carried a new weight, and even those who had never known Jennifer Collins personally felt the ripples of revelation. People glanced at one another with suspicion and relief mingling in their eyes, a reminder that evil could walk beside you unseen. Detective Angela Martinez, a young investigator who had been assigned to the reopened case in 2015, knew this feeling intimately. She had spent months sifting through decades-old evidence, tracing the invisible lines that connected a nameless suspect to the mangrove swamp where Jennifer had been found. Every step felt like threading a needle through history, each discovery more chilling than the last. Martinez had grown up in Florida, but even she could not shake the feeling that the town had changed under the weight of its own secrets, that danger had lingered quietly in corners where it should never have existed. Inside the lab, the air was sterile, cold, humming with the low thrum of equipment that had evolved beyond imagination since 1992. DNA sequencers blinked like mechanical eyes, parsing genetic codes with precision that would have been considered science fiction a generation earlier. Tiny fragments from Jennifer's clothing, carefully stored for decades, revealed patterns that were invisible to earlier investigators. Fingerprints that had gone unlinked now glimmered in digital maps, connecting dots that had once been thought random. Every technician who handled the evidence felt the weight of history pressing down, the knowledge that these traces, minute and almost imperceptible, were the bridge between decades of silence and the truth finally speaking. Martinez leaned over the microscope, heart pounding, tracing the sequences that pointed inexorably toward the person who had been invisible, unremarkable, but now undeniably guilty. Meanwhile, the suspect, whose name had become a whisper across town, maintained an appearance of normalcy. They moved through daily life with an uncanny blend of calm and avoidance, unaware or perhaps unaccepting that the web of modern forensics had finally ensnared them. Neighbors described a polite, even friendly presence, someone who had never attracted suspicion, someone whose true nature was hidden behind the ordinary rhythms of life. The contrast between past and present struck investigators profoundly. Here was a person capable of such darkness, living undetected in a town small enough that secrets usually did not survive. It was a psychological puzzle as much as a forensic one, an unsettling reminder that human nature could conceal horror in plain sight. Community reactions ranged from relief to incredulity. Families of young people double-checked routines, revisiting habits that had once seemed safe. School hallways whispered with renewed caution, teachers reminded students to stay vigilant, and local media dissected every possible detail, replaying old footage and photographs, speculating endlessly about motives and opportunities. The case dominated the consciousness of Clearwater in a way that seemed almost disproportionate to time, yet the years of unresolved anguish made the fascination unavoidable. Residents who had lived through the initial tragedy now experienced a strange mix of vindication and horror, as though the town itself had been holding its breath for a quarter-century and had only now exhaled, trembling. Investigators meticulously reconstructed the sequence of events from that fateful night. Jennifer's path from the diner to the bus stop, the shadows she passed, the streets that seemed innocuous by day but sinister by night, all became critical pieces in a mosaic that had been incomplete for decades. Security camera footage was non-existent, phone records were minimal, but the patterns were teased out from witness recollections, physical evidence, and now the definitive DNA link. Martinez coordinated interviews with those who had been neighbors in 1992, noting subtle inconsistencies in memory, moments that hinted at overlooked observations. The painstaking work revealed a chilling image of the final hours of Jennifer's life, a quiet observer following, waiting for the moment she was isolated, a sudden confrontation, and then the swift, silent violence that left her body in the swamp. Every detail reconstructed emphasized the cold efficiency of the act, the meticulousness that had allowed the perpetrator to evade suspicion for so long. The psychological toll on the investigation team was immense. For years, they had carried the story in their minds, played scenarios over and over, and imagined every possible misstep. The revelation through DNA felt like a vindication, but also a reopening of wounds that had never fully healed. Martinez found herself questioning how the person had moved undetected, how subtle social cues and everyday routines had concealed a killer's presence. Each discovery brought satisfaction mixed with unease, the balance between relief at progress and horror at the capabilities of a person hiding in plain sight. The weight of responsibility pressed down, justice delayed, yes, but finally imminent. Court preparations began cautiously. Legal teams combed through the decades-old case files, ensuring that the new DNA evidence could withstand scrutiny. Every motion, every piece of evidence was argued, challenged, and defended with care, knowing that a misstep could undo years of painstaking work. Public announcements were carefully orchestrated, and the media attention was intense. Television crews arrived, microphones poised, cameras capturing faces that had become familiar with grief and speculation over 25 years. Questions flew, some sincere, some sensationalized, but the focus remained on the revelation, a mystery solved, a murderer identified, a cold case finally closed. Jennifer's family was thrust into the public eye once more. They had lived through decades of uncertainty, celebrations tainted by absence, milestones observed with an aching void where her presence should have been. Now, the mixture of relief and renewed trauma created an emotional storm. Interviews captured the rawness of grief, the trembling voices speaking of love, loss, and the unending desire for closure. The community watched with empathy, admiration, and horror as the personal story of one girl illuminated the dark corners of a town and a criminal mind. Parents hugged children tighter, friends whispered about the past with reverence, and detectives shared a quiet sense of mission accomplished. Yet, the shadow of the crime lingered, impossible to fully dispel. As the suspect was taken into custody, the town collectively shivered. The arrest was quiet, deliberately low profile, but the news spread like wildfire. Social media and local forums erupted with speculation and analysis, threads of discussion weaving the narrative of the decades-long mystery into contemporary consciousness. The juxtaposition of ordinary life and extraordinary revelation fascinated residents. A person who had walked past them, smiled at them, coexisted in their neighborhoods, had committed a heinous act, and yet had remained invisible until the marriage of technology and persistence illuminated the truth. It was a profound, unsettling lesson in the hidden darkness within the familiar. Even with the case closed, Clearwater's streets bore the imprint of memory. The mangroves remained, silently observing, their twisted roots a living monument to tragedy. The diner's new facade could not erase the shadow of the past, and even new families moving into the area quickly became aware of the story that lingered, the cautionary tale of Jennifer Collins. Teachers, law enforcement, and local leaders incorporated the history into lessons of awareness, the community binding itself with vigilance born from experience. The echo of one crime reverberated through generations, shaping attitudes, behaviors, and the collective psyche. The breakthrough in DNA technology had solved a puzzle long thought unsolvable, yet the emotional and psychological resonance of the case would persist indefinitely. The knowledge that a killer had been walking among them for decades, unnoticed, brought an enduring sense of vulnerability. Investigators reflected on both the advancements in science and the human factors that had allowed the crime to remain hidden. Lessons were cataloged, protocols revised, evidence preservation emphasized. Every subsequent cold case investigation drew inspiration and guidance from the Collins case, a benchmark in perseverance, technology, and the relentless pursuit of truth. The town of Clearwater had survived, but its innocence had been irrevocably altered. Streets that had once felt safe at night now held an undercurrent of vigilance, memories of screams in the darkness coiling beneath daily life. Conversations in cafes, libraries, and homes often drifted toward the past, the cold case that had loomed over the community like an unspoken specter. Even decades later, parents taught children about awareness, strangers, and trust, weaving the lessons of tragedy into the fabric of life. Jennifer Collins' story had moved beyond grief into legend, a haunting reminder of what lurks unseen and the patience required to uncover truth. Detective Martinez, reflecting on the case in the quiet of her office, understood that the closure brought satisfaction yet also a stark awareness of human complexity. Evil could hide behind normalcy and justice, while powerful often moved at the pace of science and persistence rather than immediate intuition. The breakthrough did not erase the trauma, but it did provide a framework for understanding, a narrative in which the community could finally place the pieces, even if the scars remained. Each anniversary of the crime became a moment of remembrance and vigilance, a collective acknowledgement that darkness exists, sometimes quietly, sometimes violently, and that the pursuit of truth is never truly complete. Even as the news of the arrest settled into Clearwater, a palpable tension remained, thick and unrelenting, like the humid Florida air clinging to every street corner. Families walked more cautiously, conversations fell into hushed tones, and eyes darted involuntarily toward strangers who had once seemed ordinary. Detective Angela Martinez returned to the mangrove swamp, the same twisted labyrinth where Jennifer's body had been discovered decades earlier. She knelt on damp soil, examining roots matted with moss, broken reeds, evidence long collected but eternally haunting. Each footprint, each torn fragment of clothing, carried the echo of a moment frozen in time, a life ended too soon, a childhood stolen in a heartbeat. The swamp, still alive with insects and hidden movement, seemed to watch her with the same quiet menace it had held in 1992, a silent accomplice to a crime that had gone unsolved for a quarter-century. Martinez reviewed witness statements again, piecing together fragments of memory that had survived the passage of time. A neighbor recalled a van parked unusually near the diner, the engine off, a shadow moving inside. Another remembered footsteps behind Jennifer, light at first, then deliberate, closing in. One old man remembered his dog barking incessantly at nothing, its low growl a warning unheeded. These recollections, once dismissed as trivial, now fit into the emerging mosaic illuminated by the DNA breakthrough. Every small observation, every overlooked comment, was suddenly a critical element, threads connecting a killer to a scene that had seemed random, chaotic, and unsolvable. The detective marveled at how perception could betray or obscure reality, how memory, even faltering and inconsistent, could become an instrument of revelation decades later. The suspect's history came under scrutiny. Neighbors, coworkers, friends, anyone who had interacted with the individual in 1992 was interviewed exhaustively. Patterns emerged: small acts of aggression, subtle manipulations, moments of unexplained absences. A picture formed, chilling in its ordinariness, of someone who could navigate the world unnoticed while harboring violent tendencies beneath a veneer of normal life. The duality struck the team profoundly: how someone could function socially, attend work, shop in markets, smile at neighbors, and yet commit a crime so horrifying that it left the community paralyzed for decades. It was an unsettling insight into the human psyche, a reminder that darkness often wears the mask of familiarity. Meanwhile, Jennifer's family struggled with the emotional tidal wave that followed the revelation. The years of unanswered questions had carved deep grooves in their lives, birthdays and holidays shadowed by absence, milestones forever incomplete. Now, faced with the reality of who had taken Jennifer, grief was complicated by a gnawing mixture of relief, anger, and disbelief. Public appearances were emotionally draining, cameras capturing every tear and quivering voice, every fragment of raw humanity laid bare. Their story resonated, not only with Clearwater, but across the nation, a narrative of tragedy, perseverance, and finally, revelation. Journalists dissected every detail, revisiting old footage, photographs, and archived interviews, recontextualizing the case in light of the DNA breakthrough. The coverage was relentless, yet necessary, documenting a saga that had lingered too long in darkness. Investigators returned to the physical evidence, re-examining every corner of the crime scene. The mangrove swamp, once a place of chaos, revealed new details under modern scrutiny: the subtle indentation of a shoe in mud that had hardened, fibers of clothing that had eluded early testing, a strand of hair once considered irrelevant. Forensic technology, combined with meticulous analysis, produced a trail invisible to previous investigators. Each tiny clue amplified the narrative, confirming the DNA evidence, reconstructing the events with unerring precision. Martinez felt the weight of triumph and horror simultaneously. Justice was finally emerging, yet the brutality of the act remained visceral, undiminished by time or revelation. As legal proceedings approached, tension mounted. Prosecutors reviewed evidence, anticipating defense strategies designed to challenge the decades-old investigation. Witnesses rehearsed statements, some nervous, others resolute, aware that their recollections now carried unprecedented weight. The courtroom became a stage where decades of fear, uncertainty, and grief would intersect with law, procedure, and forensic certainty. Every motion filed, every objection raised, was a step in a delicate dance between human memory, legal rigor, and scientific precision. The case was no longer simply about finding a killer. It had transformed into a collective reckoning, a societal confrontation with the consequences of both action and inaction over a generation. The psychological impact on the town intensified. Teachers recounted the story to students in hushed tones, not as a tale to frighten, but as a cautionary lesson in vigilance and awareness. Parents re-examined routines, reinforcing safety measures, conscious now of the fragility of assumed security. Community leaders organized forums, discussing the implications of the case, emphasizing the importance of reporting suspicious behavior, and advocating for technological investments in crime prevention. The narrative of Jennifer Collins became woven into the town's identity, a reminder that even the quietest corners could conceal unimaginable danger, and that vigilance, though often burdensome, could ultimately save lives. As the trial commenced, the suspect's demeanor offered little insight into motive or remorse. Their calmness unnerved the courtroom, a stark contrast to the emotional intensity surrounding them. Legal teams dissected every detail, examining the chain of custody, the integrity of DNA samples, and the meticulous records maintained over 25 years. The courtroom was charged with tension, a mixture of anticipation, fear, and the weight of history. Media coverage was intense, headlines proclaiming "cold case killer identified" and "DNA breakthrough brings justice," while local residents tuned in anxiously, some mourning anew, others experiencing the relief of closure. Each day of testimony unraveled pieces of the narrative, reconstructing the night of June 14, 1992, for a public that had waited a lifetime for understanding. Simultaneously, investigators reflected on procedural lessons. Early oversights, minor errors, and technological limitations had prolonged the suffering. Fingerprint analysis, now far more sophisticated, revealed minutiae that had been invisible decades ago. Cold case units across the nation watched closely, drawing inspiration and caution from Clearwater's experience. The convergence of modern science, human persistence, and methodical review underscored the evolving landscape of law enforcement. Martinez and her colleagues recognized the profound responsibility of balancing scientific rigor with empathetic engagement, understanding that behind every case file were lives forever altered. Even as the courtroom proceedings dominated public attention, subtle discoveries continued. Small artifacts from the crime scene were re-examined, scraps of fabric, fibers, and traces of soil that had clung to clothing. Microscopic evidence illuminated the movements of both victim and perpetrator, confirming theories and dismissing others. Each revelation was a brushstroke in a larger portrait, the clarity of decades-old chaos slowly taking shape. Forensic experts marveled at the precision with which DNA could now illuminate the past, the technology acting as both judge and historian, reconstructing a narrative once obscured by time and human limitation. Meanwhile, the community grappled with complex emotions. Relief and closure mingled with lingering fear, the realization that one of their own had committed such a crime, embedding a subtle paranoia into daily life. Conversations in local cafes, libraries, and homes circled repeatedly around questions of safety, morality, and trust. Parents taught children lessons born from tragedy, neighbors observed one another more cautiously, and even casual interactions carried the unspoken awareness that darkness had once walked among them undetected. The psychological footprint of the cold case had become permanent, a reminder of the interplay between vulnerability and vigilance. Jennifer's parents, at the center of this maelstrom, struggled to reconcile decades of grief with the abrupt resolution. Their lives had been punctuated by uncertainty, anniversaries spent in quiet reflection, milestones passing without the presence of a beloved daughter. Now, the arrival of truth brought both comfort and renewed pain, the clarity of understanding coupled with the vivid recollection of loss. Public statements were measured, balancing gratitude for justice with the rawness of emotion that refused to be sanitized. Every tear, every word, became part of a larger narrative, illustrating both the human cost of violence and the perseverance of hope. Detective Martinez, walking the mangrove swamp once more, felt the weight of closure pressing on her chest. The swamp, still alive with insects and the quiet movement of wildlife, no longer seemed purely menacing. It was a repository of memory, of lessons hard won, and of the enduring persistence of truth. She traced paths, examined subtle markers, and reflected on the journey from uncertainty to revelation. The knowledge that science had caught what human intuition could not provided a measure of satisfaction, tempered by the haunting awareness that evil had once been so close, so ordinary, and yet so devastating. The town of Clearwater, though forever altered, began to exhale collectively. Streets and neighborhoods, while unchanged in appearance, carried the invisible imprint of memory, vigilance, and experience. Residents adapted, integrating lessons from tragedy into the fabric of daily life, while still attempting to restore a semblance of normalcy. Conversations shifted gradually from horror to reflection, acknowledging both the pain of the past and the resilience that allowed a community to endure. The cold case, now resolved, had become a touchstone for awareness, an emblem of perseverance, and a stark reminder that truth, no matter how delayed, could eventually surface. The courtroom was electric with tension, a charged atmosphere that seemed to press against every wall, every chair, every breath. Cameras lined the perimeter, reporters jostling for position, microphones angled toward the family, the defense, the prosecution. Residents of Clearwater, many of whom had lived through the original tragedy, filled the seats with a mixture of curiosity, dread, and anticipation. They had waited 25 years for this day, and now, finally, the truth had been unearthed, dissected, and laid bare for the world to witness. The suspect, calm and unreadable, sat with an air of quiet defiance, a stark contrast to the emotional intensity surrounding them. Detective Angela Martinez observed from the sidelines, her notebook filled with decades of observations, reflections, and questions that had haunted her through years of investigation. The room seemed to vibrate with the unspoken awareness that this was more than a trial. It was the culmination of a quarter-century of human obsession, perseverance, and heartbreak. Opening statements set the stage with precision and gravity. The prosecution painted a portrait of meticulous planning, a crime executed with chilling efficiency, hidden in plain sight, and revealed only through the relentless march of science. DNA evidence was introduced, sequences analyzed and displayed with clarity, each strand an irrefutable link between the suspect and the victim. The narrative was compelling, methodical, unyielding, designed to carry jurors through the decades-long fog of mystery. Defense attorneys countered with questions of chain of custody, the reliability of preserved samples, and the imperfections of human memory stretched over decades. Tension rippled through the room with every objection, every clarification, every challenge, reflecting the high stakes of both human emotion and legal precision. As witness testimony began, the emotional resonance deepened. Friends who had known Jennifer as a teenager recalled her laughter, her dreams, the mundane routines that had made her life relatable, vivid, and achingly ordinary. Parents described the unbearable weight of uncertainty, the invisible shadow that had hung over birthdays, graduations, and holidays. Investigators recounted painstaking work, tracing old leads, reanalyzing evidence, and ultimately uncovering the DNA link that would redefine the case. Each word, each recollection, carried with it the echo of decades, a reminder that time could delay justice but not extinguish it. The courtroom felt suspended between the past and present, a bridge across years of grief, speculation, and unrelenting pursuit of truth. Outside the courthouse, the town of Clearwater was a hive of anxious energy. Streets thrummed with reporters, onlookers, and residents drawn to the unfolding drama. Conversations crackled with speculation, details of the suspect's past, the timing of the breakthrough, the meticulous preservation of evidence that had kept hope alive for decades. Cafes, grocery stores, and school hallways echoed with discussions of the case, each interpretation layered with fear, curiosity, and the strange relief that comes with resolution. Community members who had been children at the time of Jennifer's disappearance now revisited memories with new awareness, imagining the events as they had unfolded, piecing together the narrative through the lens of contemporary knowledge and forensic certainty. Inside the courtroom, testimony revealed chilling insights. Forensic experts meticulously explained the DNA sequencing process, the methods used to extract evidence from degraded samples, and the confirmation of genetic matches that had eluded detection in 1992. Subtle traces, a strand of hair, fibers embedded in clothing, microscopic soil particles, were presented with painstaking care, each element forming an irrefutable chain linking suspect and crime. Jurors leaned forward, absorbing the meticulous detail, the clarity of scientific analysis bridging decades of mystery. The defense sought to sow doubt, questioning methods, preservation, and the reliability of long-stored samples, yet the prosecution's evidence was overwhelming, the technology precise and unforgiving. Every revelation deepened the tension, bringing the cold case to life once more in stark, undeniable terms. Jennifer's family watched, a mixture of agony and relief washing over them. Years of unanswered questions had left emotional scars, deep and persistent, shaping lives in ways the public could not fully comprehend. Now, seeing the perpetrator face accountability, hearing the narrative reconstructed with clarity, they experienced a complex catharsis. The relief of justice was tempered by the raw, visceral reminder of their loss. Public attention was intense, every tear, every shiver, every quiet intake of breath recorded and disseminated, turning personal grief into a collective observation. Yet, even amidst cameras and reporters, the family remained anchored to the reality of decades of trauma, the bittersweet weight of closure finally achieved. The trial also illuminated the failures and limitations of early investigations. Evidence mishandled, leads overlooked, and technology absent in 1992 had allowed the suspect to evade detection. Yet, the resilience of investigators, their persistence through years of dead ends, had ultimately brought the case to light. Detective Martinez reflected on the human elements, the perseverance, patience, and relentless pursuit of truth that had compensated for technological limitations. Every day spent reviewing old files, interviewing witnesses, and analyzing evidence had contributed to the eventual breakthrough, demonstrating the intersection of human diligence and scientific advancement in solving crimes that had long seemed unsolvable. Community response continued to evolve throughout the trial. Some residents expressed shock at the revelations, struggling to reconcile the suspect's ordinary outward appearance with the heinous nature of their actions. Others found solace in the completion of the narrative, finally able to close a chapter that had loomed over their lives for decades. Schools integrated lessons on vigilance, law enforcement refined cold case procedures, and neighbors revisited social routines with cautious awareness. The trial became more than a legal proceeding. It was a societal reckoning, a collective confrontation with the unsettling realization that evil can exist undetected, quietly weaving itself into the fabric of everyday life. As testimony progressed, previously unknown details surfaced. Small, innocuous behaviors from the suspect in 1992 were recontextualized, quiet observations of Jennifer at work, unexplained absences, patterns in movement that now carried sinister implications. Investigators painstakingly connected these dots, reconstructing sequences of events that had been invisible to earlier efforts. The narrative took shape like a mosaic, each piece reinforcing the others, producing an image of the crime that was horrifying in its clarity and undeniable in its precision. The combination of science, human observation, and dogged investigation culminated in a portrait of deliberate, concealed malice, hidden for decades, but now fully revealed. Jurors grappled with the weight of decades-old trauma translated into evidence. Each exhibit, each testimony, each visual reconstruction demanded attention, empathy, and analytical scrutiny. The courtroom became a microcosm of the community's collective memory, a space where grief, relief, and horror intersected. The defense continued to challenge, yet the overwhelming convergence of DNA evidence, corroborated witness accounts, and meticulously preserved forensic material left little room for doubt. Observers felt the gravity of every word spoken, the significance of each moment magnified by the long delay in justice. Throughout Clearwater, media coverage intensified. Local stations broadcast live updates, newspapers printed detailed analyses, and social media, though in its early stages, buzzed with discussions, speculation, and reflection. Residents revisited the landscape of their town with new perception, tracing paths Jennifer had walked, imagining the unseen eyes that had followed her, and internalizing the lessons learned from decades of unresolved fear. The community, though forever marked by the tragedy, demonstrated resilience, engagement, and the capacity for collective reflection in the face of extraordinary revelation. As the trial neared its conclusion, the prosecution summarized with a meticulous retelling of the events, emphasizing both the suffering endured and the triumph of persistence and technology. The narrative wove together decades of memory, forensic science, and human observation into a coherent, undeniable account of crime, consequence, and eventual accountability. Families, friends, and community members listened, many overwhelmed by the emotional weight, yet united in recognition of the resolution brought forth by human perseverance and scientific advancement. Even with the trial's resolution approaching, the legacy of the case persisted. Streets, schools, and neighborhoods retained subtle markers of memory. Parents imparted cautionary wisdom to children. Law enforcement integrated lessons learned into cold case protocols nationwide. Jennifer Collins's story became emblematic of both tragedy and tenacity, illustrating the capacity for justice to emerge from darkness and time, and the enduring influence of one life whose absence had shaped an entire community. The day of the verdict arrived like a storm over Clearwater, heavy with anticipation, tension, and the weight of decades. Courtroom doors opened early, and seats filled with residents who had waited a lifetime for closure, journalists ready to capture every nuance, and family members whose lives had been indelibly marked by loss. The air vibrated with expectation, electric and oppressive, each breath a mixture of fear, hope, and unresolved grief. Detective Angela Martinez arrived before dawn, notebook in hand, heart hammering in rhythm with the city's nervous pulse. The streets outside reflected the unease within, shutters closed, neighbors lingering silently, conversations hushed as if even the smallest sound could disrupt the fragile balance of anticipation. For 25 years, Jennifer Collins had been a phantom presence in this town, and now every eye in the room turned toward the moment that would transform memory into accountability. The judge entered, solemn, commanding attention without uttering a word. A silence fell, thick and palpable, as jurors were sworn in once more, each carrying the gravity of both personal responsibility and collective conscience. Prosecutors rose, presenting a final, sweeping summary of the case, decades of uncertainty, painstaking analysis, DNA breakthroughs, corroborated witness statements, and the meticulous reconstruction of Jennifer's last hours. Every fact, every detail, meticulously tied together in a narrative that was as unrelenting as it was devastating. The courtroom absorbed the weight, the collective consciousness hanging on every word. Defense attorneys countered with measured argument, highlighting human fallibility, the potential for error over decades, and questions about memory and the handling of evidence. Yet, the DNA evidence, the incontrovertible bridge across 25 years, loomed like an unyielding monolith over every counterargument. Jennifer's parents sat in the front row, hands clasped tightly together, knuckles white, eyes fixed on the suspect with a mixture of sorrow and fierce resolve. They had lived in the shadow of absence for so long that the prospect of justice felt both surreal and long overdue. Each revelation in the courtroom rekindled old grief, yet interlaced it with a glimmer of vindication, the sense that the relentless pursuit of truth had finally pierced the darkness. Tears traced silent paths down their cheeks, while a collective hush fell over the gallery as the judge prepared to call the jury. Every eye watched, every ear strained, and the community collectively held its breath as the final act of this decade-spanning narrative unfolded. The jury filed back into the room, faces solemn, some weary, all carrying the burden of decision. Four-person cleared their throat, voice trembling with gravity, as they delivered the verdict that would reverberate through every home, every street, and every memory tied to the night of June 14, 1992, guilty. The words struck the courtroom like a physical blow, reverberating against walls, seats, and hearts. Gasps, stifled cries, and silent tears mingled in a symphony of release and horror. The suspect's composure faltered for the first time, a subtle crack in the facade, revealing the human response to a reckoning that had been unavoidable for decades. Outside, the town's reaction was immediate and intense. News trucks swarmed intersections, broadcasting live reactions, while residents gathered in small groups on sidewalks, in cafes, and along street corners. Conversations were a mixture of relief and disbelief. The weight of unresolved trauma had been lifted, yet the memory of Jennifer's absence and the long years of fear persisted. Parents hugged children tighter, Neighbors exchanged knowing glances, and even those who had never met Jennifer felt the tremor of closure ripple through their collective consciousness. Clearwater, forever shaped by this tragedy, exhaled in unison, a tentative sigh that acknowledged both loss and justice. In the days following the verdict, the town navigated a complex emotional terrain. Schools held assemblies, emphasizing awareness, safety, and vigilance while honoring the memory of Jennifer Collins. Law enforcement hosted community forums, sharing insights from the case and explaining the breakthroughs in forensic science that had led to resolution. Residents reflected privately and publicly, grappling with the realization that evil had existed quietly among them, yet had been illuminated by perseverance and technology. The duality of fear and relief permeated every interaction, a reminder that even with justice, scars remain and the shadow of the past endures. Jennifer's family continued to process the verdict, navigating waves of emotion that alternated between grief, relief, and lingering sorrow. They walked streets that had once felt oppressive with memory, retracing paths that had long been associated with loss. Friends and extended family offered support, journalists sought interviews, and the public followed with empathetic attention. Yet beneath the layers of media attention and public reaction, the private mourning persisted, a lifetime of moments missed, milestones uncelebrated, and experiences forever altered. The verdict did not erase absence, but it provided a definitive acknowledgement that justice, though delayed, had been served. Detective Martinez reflected on the arc of the case, tracing the trajectory from initial investigation to modern forensic breakthroughs. The meticulous work, the patient revisiting of evidence, and the unwavering attention to detail had bridged decades, proving the efficacy of persistence and scientific advancement. The resolution highlighted not only the power of DNA technology, but also the human capacity to endure, investigate, and seek truth in the face of prolonged uncertainty. Every lesson, every observation, every small act of diligence had contributed to a conclusion that was both satisfying and sobering. As the courtroom emptied, conversations shifted toward remembrance and reflection. Media coverage emphasized the triumph of justice, yet the undertone of tragedy remained inescapable. Community leaders and residents discussed ways to honor Jennifer's memory, proposing scholarships, memorials, and initiatives to ensure that her story continued to serve as a cautionary tale and a source of vigilance. The town embraced a dual purpose: to remember the horror and to prevent its recurrence. Streets that had once been haunted by fear were now navigated with awareness, tempered by the knowledge that justice, even delayed, is achievable. In private moments, the psychological and emotional weight persisted. Families revisited memories, reconstructing the timeline of Jennifer's life, the night she disappeared, and the decades-long search for truth. Conversations at dinner tables, in living rooms, and during quiet walks reflected on vulnerability, trust, and the human capacity for both concealment and revelation. Lessons emerged organically: vigilance, empathy, and the importance of supporting law enforcement efforts, particularly in unresolved cases that linger for years. Clearwater's identity had been irrevocably intertwined with this narrative, its history forever colored by the events surrounding Jennifer Collins. Law enforcement, energized by the resolution, began applying insights from the Collins case to other cold cases. Procedures were refined, evidence handling protocols updated, and investigative strategies revisited with the benefit of technological and methodological advancement. The case became a benchmark, illustrating the intersection of human persistence, scientific progress, and legal diligence. Martinez and her colleagues understood that their work had transcended one incident, influencing approaches and expectations nationwide. The triumph was both personal and professional, a testament to decades-long dedication and unyielding pursuit of justice. Yet, even in triumph, subtle unease lingered. The town had been irrevocably reminded of the latent capacity for violence within the familiar, the ordinary, and the unsuspected. Conversations, though tinged with relief, retained undertones of caution and reflection. Parents monitored routines more closely, Neighbors observed behaviors with quiet attention, and the community collectively internalized lessons that extended far beyond Jennifer's story. Vigilance had become a permanent feature of daily life, a subtle but enduring legacy of tragedy transformed into awareness. Jennifer Collins's story, though concluded in the legal sense, reverberated in memory and narrative. The town streets, schools, and homes carried invisible markers of both horror and perseverance. Annual commemorations, quiet remembrances, and community initiatives ensured that the lessons of the cold case endured. Detective Martinez, reflecting quietly on the decades-long journey, understood the enduring duality of closure, satisfaction in resolution, and acknowledgement of persistent grief. The narrative, complex and deeply human, illustrated the enduring interplay between time, truth, and memory, offering both closure and continued reflection. As Clearwater moved forward, the shadow of the past remained ever present, a reminder that even solved cold cases carry profound emotional, psychological, and societal consequences. Streets and neighborhoods were infused with collective memory, conversations balanced between caution and celebration, and the community, though scarred, demonstrated resilience. Jennifer's life, her absence, and the eventual revelation of her killer had left an indelible imprint, shaping the identity of Clearwater and the consciousness of those who had witnessed, remembered, and endured. The case, now legally closed, continued to shape thought, awareness, and vigilance, underscoring the enduring impact of one tragedy on an entire community. Even after the verdict, Clearwater carried a weight that could not be lifted by legal closure alone. Streets felt quieter, but the silence was heavy with memory, the air thick with recollection and latent fear. Parents walked their children to school with tightened grips, eyes scanning, hearts still wary of the unseen. Coffee shops, libraries, and small diners buzzed with hushed conversations, the town collectively processing a trauma that had spanned generations. Detective Angela Martinez returned to the office, reviewing lingering evidence, small anomalies, and seemingly insignificant details that had been preserved over decades. Some fibers, some soil traces, fragments of memory and witness statements, these subtle elements whispered secrets that even the verdict could not silence. The cold case had been solved in court, but the narrative of the crime, its ripple effects, and the shadow it cast over human consciousness remained unresolved. Investigators continued to examine ancillary leads, connections tangential to the original crime, threads that might illuminate the suspect's behavior before and after June 14, 1992. Interviews with former neighbors revealed small peculiarities once dismissed: a late-night visit here, a sudden relocation there, patterns in behavior now framed within the context of the confirmed crime. Each minor revelation acted as a prism, reflecting new angles on the events that had remained opaque for so long. The town's ordinary fabric, its routines, its casual interactions, was now seen in stark contrast to the darkness that had lurked within, hidden yet persistent. Every detail, every memory revisited, carried the weight of decades, and every observation reinforced the unsettling truth: evil can integrate seamlessly into the everyday. Jennifer's family grappled with the residual trauma. The trial had delivered justice, yet the emotional and psychological void remained. Anniversaries of her disappearance were punctuated not just by remembrance, but by reflection on the fragility of life and the unexpected intersections of ordinary routines and violence. Each commemoration reopened the wound, yet it also reaffirmed the necessity of vigilance, community awareness, and the persistent pursuit of truth. The family worked quietly with local organizations, contributing to awareness campaigns, scholarships in Jennifer's name, and advocacy for improved law enforcement procedures, attempting to turn grief into a form of resilience that could benefit the broader community. In the mangrove swamp, where Jennifer's life had ended, the environment retained a chilling presence. The twisted roots, the murky water, and the oppressive humidity seemed to embody the history of the crime, a silent witness to both brutality and revelation. Martinez revisited the swamp repeatedly, examining every subtle indentation in the mud, every remaining trace that could yield insight into the suspect's actions and methods. The meticulous documentation of footprints, soil patterns, and plant disturbances illuminated the criminal's path in granular detail, reconstructing a sequence of movement that had long been invisible to the human eye. The swamp, both timeless and mutable, continued to hold secrets, reminding the investigators and the community that memory is tangible and history resides in the spaces we often overlook. As months passed, minor but significant discoveries emerged. Forgotten personal items, previously overlooked photographs, and microtraces of evidence provided nuanced insights into the suspect's motivations, habits, and behavioral patterns. While none altered the conviction, these details offered a more comprehensive understanding of the human mind behind the crime, a reflection on the subtle intersections of opportunity, intent, and concealment. Each revelation was a stark reminder of the complexity of human behavior, the fragility of safety, and the importance of meticulous record-keeping and investigations. Law enforcement officers documented every nuance, ensuring that lessons were codified for future cold cases and that the patterns uncovered would inform training and investigative methodology for years to come. The community, though relieved by the verdict, struggled with residual fear and awareness. Conversations in schools, workplaces, and homes continually reference Jennifer's story as a cautionary tale, emphasizing the importance of vigilance and the latent presence of danger even in familiar settings. Social routines, once unquestioned, were subtly altered, routes to work, school commutes, neighborhood interactions, all imbued with a quiet attentiveness that spoke to collective memory and enduring caution. Residents acknowledged the duality of relief and wariness, understanding that while justice had been served, the psychological footprint of the crime remained permanent. In local media, follow-up reports explored the broader implications of the case. Experts discussed advances in DNA technology, forensic preservation, and cold case methodology, framing Jennifer Collins's story as a pivotal example of science intersecting with human persistence. Analysts highlighted the patterns of missed observation, the importance of community vigilance, and the delicate interplay between ordinary life and concealed malevolence. Each article, each broadcast segment, served as both retrospective documentation and educational insight, emphasizing the enduring lessons of the case beyond the courtroom. Meanwhile, Martinez and her team began mentoring younger investigators, passing on insights from decades-long work. Lessons encompassed more than forensics. They included patience, attention to nuance, interpretation of human behavior, and the relentless pursuit of leads that may appear insignificant at first glance. Training sessions incorporated the minutiae of evidence collection, witness interview techniques, and the integration of evolving technology into long-term investigative strategies. The Collins case became a foundational example, illustrating the necessity of persistence, precision, and psychological awareness in unraveling even the most deeply concealed crimes. Even the smallest details from 1992 resurfaced under the lens of modern analysis. A footprint's angle suggested hesitation or confrontation. Clothing fibers indicated proximity to unseen objects. Witnesses recalled fleeting gestures or glances, now interpreted as prelude to violence. These fragments of memory, trace evidence, and behavioral observation converged to create a richer, more disturbing portrait of the night Jennifer was taken. Each revelation reminded investigators and the community that closure in legal terms does not eliminate the complexity of understanding, and that crime leaves traces not only in bodies and evidence, but in human memory, emotion, and social fabric. Psychologists and social workers engaged with the community to address the residual impact. The collective trauma of living with a cold case for decades had imprinted on every generation that grew up under its shadow. Counseling sessions, workshops, and public talks focused on coping mechanisms, awareness, and the subtleties of memory and trauma. Jennifer's story was shared not just as history, but as a living narrative with educational and emotional value, a case study in resilience, vigilance, and the slow, often painful arc of justice. Detective Martinez herself grappled with the persistent echoes of the case. Nights were filled with reflection, pathways through the swamp, minutiae of evidence, moments of intuition validated by modern technology. She recognized the profound duality of triumph and unease, the satisfaction of closure coupled with the haunting awareness of what had occurred unnoticed for so long. The case became a personal benchmark, a reminder that investigation is both a scientific and psychological endeavor, that persistence can bridge decades, and that justice, while delayed, remains imperative. In the town of Clearwater, life gradually resumed, though forever colored by the events of 1992. Streets were traversed with newfound mindfulness, community bonds strengthened through shared experience, and collective memory preserved in subtle rituals of acknowledgement. Annual remembrances of Jennifer Collins incorporated educational elements, safety awareness, and psychological reflection, ensuring that her story remained relevant and instructive. The cold case's resolution, while providing legal closure, became a catalyst for broader societal awareness, a narrative linking history, emotion, science, and community resilience in a tapestry both sobering and instructive. Even years after the verdict, the shadow of that night lingered. Parents recounted the events to children in age-appropriate ways, emphasizing caution without inducing fear. Teachers incorporated lessons of awareness, observation, and empathy. Local authorities maintained vigilance, refining protocols for evidence preservation, cold case analysis, and community engagement. Jennifer's life, though tragically cut short, continued to shape behaviors, policies, and consciousness, a testament to both loss and enduring influence. Even years after the trial, Clearwater remained a town shadowed by memory, the collective psyche subtly reshaped by events long concluded, but never forgotten. Children walked home under vigilant eyes, friends checked on one another with quiet caution, and conversations, though casual on the surface, often circled back to the lingering presence of past horrors. Detective Angela Martinez revisited the suspect's old haunts, the neighborhoods where minor anomalies had gone unnoticed, tracing footsteps that once seemed ordinary but, in retrospect, bore the silent signature of calculated intent. The streets themselves appeared different now, ordinary facades masking the echo of unseen observation, the subtle layering of evil upon the mundane rhythms of daily life. Memory and environment intertwined, creating an atmosphere thick with both relief and residual fear. Small details about the suspect emerged gradually, like tremors beneath calm waters. Former acquaintances recalled fleeting behaviors, late-night walks, unusual purchases, moments of curiosity directed at strangers that, at the time, seemed trivial or socially awkward, but now hinted at something darker. Investigators revisited these accounts with the precision of decades-old pattern recognition, connecting gestures, observations, and circumstantial evidence that had been invisible when first reported. The suspect, ordinary to neighbors and colleagues, had maintained a deceptive equilibrium, blending into society while harboring an inner calculus of malevolence. Every revelation, however minor, reinforced the disquieting truth: the familiar can conceal the unimaginable. Meanwhile, Jennifer's family navigated the long, uneven path of emotional recovery. Each anniversary, each birthday, brought memories that were simultaneously comforting and torturous. The absence of a daughter, the silent spaces where her laughter should have been, lingered despite the conviction that had delivered legal justice. Grief was no longer solely private, it had become communal, observed, discussed, and dissected in public forums, local media, and social networks. Even with closure, the resonance of loss persisted, shaping decisions, interactions, and emotional landscapes within the family and the wider community. The psychological imprint of a life interrupted extends far beyond the courtroom, permeating the invisible fabric of everyday existence. Horrific recollections occasionally surfaced unexpectedly. Witnesses recounted moments of unease from 1992 that had been dismissed, a sudden chill walking past the diner, a figure glimpsed in peripheral vision, a voice heard briefly in empty corridors. Martinez meticulously logged these accounts, noting how ordinary experiences had been interlaced with subtle premonitions of danger. These recollections, when aligned with modern understanding and DNA evidence, created a pattern of anticipation and forewarning that had gone unrecognized for decades. The interplay between memory, fear, and hindsight illuminated both the sophistication of the suspect and the vulnerability of the community. The suspect's behavioral patterns offered chilling insight into the human capacity for deception. Routine tasks, seemingly mundane, were often calculated with precision. Time spent in public spaces, attention to the town's rhythms, and interactions with acquaintances were all embedded in a hidden strategy that allowed the crime to remain concealed. Interviews with neighbors and colleagues revealed minor oddities, attention paid to the comings and goings of strangers, repeated unexplained absences, and casual inquiries into the routines of teenagers in the area. Investigators mapped these behaviors alongside forensic evidence, constructing a psychological profile that explained, in terrifying clarity, how an ordinary facade masked predatory intent for decades. Community rituals shifted subtly under the shadow of memory. Local schools incorporated safety drills, not solely as precaution, but as acknowledgement of historical precedent. Neighborhood watch groups intensified activity, informal communication networks flourished, and ordinary interactions were infused with heightened awareness. The collective consciousness of Clearwater, shaped by tragedy, reflected both resilience and vigilance, a social memory system designed to internalize lessons and prevent repetition. Every parent's cautionary advice, every community meeting, every reflection on routine safety was rooted in the lingering imprint of Jennifer Collins's story. Meanwhile, Martinez and her investigative team continued to uncover peripheral details, small fragments of information that illuminated the broader behavioral context of the suspect. A long-forgotten diary entry, a misfiled receipt, a neighbor's recollection of an unusual conversation, all were analyzed with forensic and psychological precision. These minor details, though not altering the conviction, provided invaluable insight into the mindset, methods, and preparation that had allowed the crime to remain undetected for decades. The mosaic of human behavior, chance observation, and forensic revelation grew increasingly complex, highlighting the interplay between vigilance, perception, and deception. Even mundane locales carried echoes of the past. The diner where Jennifer had been last seen remained operational, its booths and tables now visited with heightened awareness by patrons. Martinez noted that even the arrangement of chairs and tables, the angle of streetlights, and the rhythm of traffic contributed to the spatial understanding of the original crime. Environmental psychology, subtle observation, and forensic mapping intersected to create a vivid reconstruction of the night, each spatial element reinforcing the narrative of pursuit, isolation, and predation. The ordinary streets and public spaces, once neutral, became stages for understanding the concealment of violence within daily life. Public reaction continued to fluctuate between catharsis and unease. Media coverage revisited minor details of the case, presenting both new information and reflective analysis. Interviews with criminologists and forensic experts emphasized the significance of DNA technology, persistence, and attention to human behavior in cold case resolution. Yet, even as closure was celebrated, the reminders of vulnerability persisted. Community members acknowledged that vigilance must be constant, that trust is complex, and that the ordinary can conceal extraordinary malevolence. Every recollection, every public discussion, reinforced the narrative that the psychological landscape of Clearwater had been irreversibly shaped by one night, one life, and one criminal's capacity for concealment. Jennifer's family continued their quiet work to memorialize her presence, transforming grief into proactive education and advocacy. Scholarship funds, awareness programs, and safety initiatives became enduring markers of resilience, ensuring that the story transcended legal resolution. Community lectures, school visits, and public forums allowed lessons from the cold case to inform behavior, vigilance, and social awareness. The enduring psychological impact, while painful, was channeled into constructive engagement, bridging memory, learning, and collective responsibility. Detective Martinez remained vigilant, revisiting patterns, evidence, and memories with meticulous attention. Night walks through the mangrove swamps, examination of environmental traces, and analysis of behavioral patterns continued to inform both personal understanding and institutional knowledge. The subtle intersection of human observation, forensic precision, and persistent inquiry created a living archive of lessons, demonstrating that the resolution of a cold case is as much about understanding the human condition as it is about achieving legal justice. Even casual elements of daily life in Clearwater retained resonance. A van parked idly on a side street, an unoccupied alleyway, a fleeting shadow. These were reminders of human perception, memory, and the importance of context. Martinez used these cues to train junior detectives, illustrating how small environmental observations can hold significance when mapped against behavioral patterns. The interplay of space, routine, and human psychology became both a teaching tool and a method for understanding residual impact, ensuring that the lessons of Jennifer Collins's case endured beyond the courtroom and beyond immediate memory. The community's collective memory continued to evolve. Narratives of resilience, vigilance, and tragedy were woven into the cultural fabric of Clearwater. Annual memorials incorporated both remembrance and educational outreach, combining ritual with pragmatic guidance. Children grew up knowing the story not as abstract fear, but as a lesson in awareness, empathy, and precaution. Adults reflected on their own behaviors and assumptions, recognizing that even the familiar can harbor danger and that attention to detail, while subtle, can be protective. The cold case, resolved yet haunting, had become a cornerstone of community consciousness. The shockwaves of the 1992 cold case continued to ripple through Clearwater, not just as memory, but as a force shaping community dynamics, interpersonal trust, and social cohesion. Families reorganized routines, neighbors monitored interactions more closely, and even casual exchanges carried the invisible weight of awareness. Detective Angela Martinez reviewed old case files with renewed eyes, noting patterns that had once seemed insignificant but now resonated with chilling clarity. The suspect's subtle manipulations, the strategic absence during key moments, the calculated interactions with teenagers and young women in the area, all these behavioral breadcrumbs, once invisible, had been illuminated by modern forensic understanding. The intersection of psychology and forensics became undeniable. Evil, in its most insidious form, thrives in ordinary spaces, camouflaged beneath mundane actions. Community leaders convened to discuss broader social implications. Workshops on situational awareness, public safety, and the subtle signs of predatory behavior became regular events. Schools integrated the lessons from Jennifer Collins's case into curricula, emphasizing not just personal safety, but also social observation, empathy, and the importance of reporting anomalies. Local businesses reviewed security protocols, street lighting was reassessed, and neighborhood watch programs were reinvigorated. The cold case had transcended its legal conclusion, functioning as both cautionary tale and social catalyst. The community collectively acknowledged that vigilance, education, and historical awareness were essential to preventing future tragedies, weaving the case into the fabric of collective consciousness. Martinez herself delved deeper into the suspect's psychological profile. Behavioral experts collaborated to interpret subtle indicators from the suspect's life before and after 1992. Patterns of obsessive observation, meticulous planning, and compartmentalization of personal and criminal behavior emerged. The suspect's ability to maintain social normalcy while harboring violent intent was dissected in painstaking detail, revealing a mind capable of navigating ordinary life while executing clandestine acts of predation. Each insight reinforced the uncomfortable realization that outward normalcy can mask profound danger, and that the human psyche is capable of deception on a scale both subtle and devastating. Forensic evidence from the original crime scene continued to yield minor but significant insights. Microscopic soil analysis revealed patterns of movement, Previously undetectable fibers indicated repeated contact with objects and surfaces, and small fragments of hair and skin, once considered inconsequential, provided nuanced understanding of the interactions between victim and perpetrator. These residual discoveries, though not legally transformative, enriched the narrative of the crime, offering investigators and the community a clearer mental reconstruction of the events that had unfolded. Every detail, however minute, contributed to the chilling realism of the night Jennifer Collins disappeared and the predator's careful orchestration. Psychologists emphasized the long-term trauma inflicted on Clearwater. Children who had grown up during the decades-long unresolved case were particularly affected. Nightmares, hypervigilance, and subtle social anxiety became common. Families navigated emotional legacies, negotiating between reassurance and caution, while educators and social workers implemented strategies to mitigate lasting psychological effects. The town, though legally reconciled with the perpetrator's conviction, remained psychologically marked, its collective identity subtly reshaped by a crime that had imposed generational awareness. Even casual interactions were informed by subconscious recollection, glances at unfamiliar vehicles, attention to footsteps, and awareness of timing and routine, all informed by the lingering shadow of the cold case. New interviews with former acquaintances of the suspect revealed startling behavioral consistencies. Reports of obsession with young women, meticulous note-taking, and unusual patterns of absence now aligned with forensic reconstructions. These accounts, decades old yet corroborated by scientific analysis, illuminated the suspect's methods with unnerving precision. Behavioral mapping demonstrated premeditation, careful observation, and exploitation of routine vulnerability, reinforcing the profile of a criminal mind that functioned in full public view while orchestrating private terror. Martinez meticulously documented these connections, understanding that the intersection of testimony, memory, and science not only validates historical findings, but provides crucial insight into preventing similar offenses. Social repercussions extended to the town's perception of safety and trust. Casual neighbors became more observant, informal community communication networks strengthened, and collective awareness of subtle environmental and behavioral cues increased. Conversations frequently referenced both the tragic history and practical precautions, shaping a culture of vigilance without overt paranoia. Local governance invested in lighting, surveillance, and public education, acknowledging the psychological necessity of environmental reassurance alongside crime prevention. The lessons of the cold case permeated beyond immediate residents, influencing regional policy and inspiring analogous protocols in nearby communities facing unresolved crimes. Forensic reanalysis also revealed minor anomalies in the original crime scene that, though legally redundant, added dimension to the narrative. Soil compaction, directional scuff marks, and subtle layering of debris suggested moments of struggle, hesitation, or miscalculation by the perpetrator. Fiber strands, meticulously preserved, revealed repeated contact points, and residual biological material traced the interaction between victim and suspect across time and space. Martinez recognized that such granular reconstructions, while unable to alter the conviction, provided invaluable insight into criminal methodology, reinforcing the psychological understanding of the perpetrator and contributing to a broader educational framework for law enforcement. The family's ongoing involvement in advocacy reinforced the intersection of grief and social responsibility. Scholarships and awareness campaigns not only memorialized Jennifer Collins, but also provided actionable pathways for education on personal safety, community vigilance, and forensic science literacy. Public speaking engagements, workshops, and interviews became instruments for transforming personal tragedy into societal benefit, providing tangible applications for lessons learned from decades-long investigative work. Jennifer's story, though rooted in horror, evolved into a vector for awareness and preventive action, its influence extending far beyond Clearwater. Local media continued coverage, reflecting on both historical context and contemporary implications. Analysis of forensic methods, community response, and psychological profiling highlighted advancements in law enforcement capabilities and the societal integration of cold case learnings. Every broadcast, article, and discussion reinforced the delicate balance between acknowledging tragedy, understanding human behavior, and promoting vigilance. The narrative became multidimensional: legal, psychological, educational, and social, illustrating the comprehensive impact of a single, unresolved crime finally illuminated by science and persistence. Meanwhile, Martinez revisited environmental patterns from the original crime scene. Mangrove root placement, water flow, and terrain features were analyzed in conjunction with witness reports to reconstruct movement and strategy. Small variations in footprint depth and direction suggested moments of hesitation, calculation, or interaction. Each micro-observation contributed to a vivid, almost cinematic reconstruction of the night, reinforcing the intersection of spatial awareness, forensic detail, and behavioral psychology in understanding cold case dynamics. The swamp, a seemingly static landscape, became an active participant in revealing truth through its subtle testimony to the actions that had occurred decades earlier. The psychological profile of the suspect was shared with other investigative units, forming part of an educational framework for handling long-term, unresolved crimes. Behavioral patterns, concealment strategies, and interaction dynamics were documented, analyzed, and integrated into national cold case protocols. Martinez understood that the case's resolution had implications far beyond local justice. It served as a template for approaching, interpreting, and ultimately solving crimes that had once seemed permanently obscured. The methodology became both preventative and instructive, highlighting the intersection of human psychology, persistent investigation, and modern forensic technology. Even with legal closure, subtle community anxieties persisted. Unfamiliar faces, unusual patterns of movement, and unexplained absences triggered heightened awareness. Yet, unlike paralyzing fear, this vigilance was tempered by knowledge, history, and empowerment derived from both the trial and subsequent forensic insights. Families, schools, and community groups implemented layered safety strategies, integrating lessons from the cold case into daily life without succumbing to paranoia. The collective consciousness of Clearwater reflected a delicate balance: grief transformed into awareness, memory into preparation, and past trauma into a guiding principle for